Today is Epiphany. I'm sure you know the word Epiphany to mean this great awakening, this great realization of some sort. It is when Jesus was revealed to the world for Christians. Those three kings came and acted as witnesses to his greatness. It is a cause for celebration for multiple peoples around the world. In fact, many Spanish-speaking nations refer to this as the Day of the Kings, Dia de los Reyes, and it can be as important as Christmas Day for those people. In the Eastern Orthodox churches, this is in fact their Christmas Day. And so it's an important day for many different people around the world. There is a relentlessness, isn't there, to school years. It seems that no sooner have we just turned up at school than we are considering the trips at half term, the exams that must be completed, what we're doing for Easter, and the perils of final exams next term. To the Year 11s in here, you have your rehearsal examinations starting today. Very best of luck with those, and I hope you learn from the mistakes that you make in those examinations. And to the rest of the community, we all have a responsibility to support those Year 11s in their learning. So please be aware of that. Be aware of the fact that they're taking examinations and the fact that we need to support them through that. One of the reasons I like schools is because of their cyclical nature. I don't think it is relentless. I think it is constantly growing, constantly evolving, but it is cyclical. And there is that element of the new year that the chaplain spoke about. What are your New Year's resolutions? Have you learnt from the mistakes of the past? What will you do differently this year? And if you make the same resolution as you made last year and the year before and the year before that, or if you make a resolution just to get an adult off your back, then it is probably pointless and you are probably failing to learn from your mistakes. We're a community that is very active. And we're a community that understands failure and understands learning from mistakes. That is so true to those of you who are musicians, who understand that you must practice and practice again and practice again if you are to achieve success in those examinations, in those competitions, or indeed just enjoyment, perfection, and progress. The same is true, of course, in sport. Your coaches, your teammates, talk to you about what has not gone well, what we need to improve in order to do better next time. We learn from those mistakes, we improve, and then we have victories, then we progress. In art, it's fascinating to look at refinement. We do not paint a perfect piece the first time over. Often we must refine it multiple times. Sometimes we must discard it. Often, though, we can refine the existing piece to improve it. Maybe it never achieves perfection. There's a whole assembly in just that one point. You were probably like me. You started New Year's Day with a degree of optimism. But it did seem that within about 4 days, we had achieved cataclysmic disaster around the world. We had floods of biblical proportions in Indonesia. We had fires fitting of the book of Revelations in Australia. We had racist attacks simultaneously around the globe. And then we had some actions which may yet prove the start of major conflict. Let's hope not World War. It seems that we are not globally learning from our mistakes. Some of you will have studied the poetry of Christina Rossetti. I think some of you might have studied her poem, Remember. I think Rossetti is a fantastic poet. She was born in 1829, the daughter of an Italian immigrant to this country. And she wrote a poem that you may not have come across, but I encourage you to go and have a look at it. Old and New Year Ditties. So here we go. I'm going to wow you with some poetry. Don't worry, it's only 2 verses. New Year met me, somewhat tired. Stripped of favourite things, I had balked of much desired. Yet further on my road today, God willing, further on my way. The important verse. New year coming on apace. What have you to give me? Bring you scathe or bring you grace? Face me with honest face. You shall not deceive me. Be it good or ill, be it what you will, it needs shall help me on my road, my rugged way to heaven, please God. In that poem, Rossetti is imagining the new year. She's saying she's actually a bit sad because she's leaving behind the excitements of last year. She's nervous about what the new year brings. But she is requesting of that new year honesty. She is requesting authenticity of that new year. She is requesting that it does not deceive her and that it makes her a better person as a result of that year. Interesting that it speaks so strongly to one of our values that I spoke to you about last term, that of authenticity. I mentioned the terrible racist attacks happening simultaneously around the world, it seemed, at the end of last year, the start of this. I was referring, of course, to the fact that in New York, during the festival of Hanukkah, the Jewish festival of Hanukkah, there were multiple stabbings of Jewish people. It seemed that the attacker had merely Googled prominent Jewish businessmen and then gone out with a view to attack them. There was no greater motivation than that, and that is perhaps what is most sickening about it. At the same time, almost, in London, there was anti-Semitic graffiti daubed on businesses, religious sites, and public sites around the city. Do you know about Hanukkah? Many of you probably know better than me. It is the 2nd century BC rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, where, as legend says, Jews had risen up against oppressors in the Maccabean revolt. Hanukkah celebrates a rise against oppression from the 2nd century BC. And yet, in 2020, 2,200 years later, the same crimes are being perpetrated again during that very festival. Indeed, to me, sorry to scaremonger, but within living memory of the Holocaust, it seems to me that we are seeing again anti-Semitism as a global phenomenon within the living memory of the Holocaust. What are you going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? Is there anything we can do about it? And that surely is the challenge, isn't it? Well, I think there is. I think there is something we can do about it. And it's contained within our values, isn't it, that I spoke to you about last term. I put on that screen in front of you, be kind. I spoke to you about the fact that kindness is not soft, it is not woolly. Kindness is demanding, it is challenging. It is sometimes quite hard. I put up some statements which said, you are respectful and inclusive to all. You are empathetic, always trying to understand the emotions and feelings of those around you. You show humility at all times. You are aware of the impact that you have on others. I think that as a society, we need to find our way again around kindness and tolerance. Only a few days later, the President of America, with no acknowledgement of the attacks in New York, then goes his own way, instructing the death of the Iranian General Soleimani. Now, I'm going to try and tread a careful line in my comments here, because it's not straightforward. Most commentators agree that General Soleimani did many evil things. Most commentators agree that. Most commentators agree he was responsible for the instruction of terrorism within Syria and within Iraq. and of insurgency movements. Most agree that. But does that make it right to instruct his killing in that way? And that's my challenge to you. Just because someone is bad, just because someone may be evil, does that justify any means against them? That is a massive conundrum. I would say, personally, within our community, it does not necessarily justify any and all means against them. I think there are too many bystanders in our community. There are too many people who, when bullying takes place, do not intervene. They are quiet. They sometimes giggle. They sometimes share a rumour. And by doing that, they show they agree with the bully. I think there are not enough upstanders in our community, by which I mean Millfield, by which I mean Britain, by which I mean society as a whole. I don't think there are enough upstanders in our community. There are things that you can do. If you see that someone is being bullied, then you should speak up about it. You should sit with them. You should support them. If you see it happening online, you can directly message them to offer your support. You can distract from the victim. You can challenge rumour. How many times when you hear a rumour, do you say, how do you know that to be true? Please give me your evidence for knowing that rumour to be true. Because that's what an upstander would do. A bystander would accept the rumour. They would laugh. They would do nothing. An upstander would challenge a rumour. You can talk to a trusted adult. You can sit with someone who is lonely or alone. There are many things we can do. But what we must not do is be a bystander. What we must not do is allow the past to repeat itself 2,200 years after it has happened repeatedly. We must be different. Sometimes for you, I accept, there may be a lack of good role models that you can point to within the global framework. But I believe that within literature, within your own community, within your own families, there are plenty of good role models that you can look to. So my urge to you in this decade is to learn from the past. We must be upstanding. We must be kind. We must be tolerant. It is hard, and we must do things differently.